Council meeting. So if you'll please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all. Can I have roll call, please, City?
Counselor Blevins.
Here.
Counselor Dolezal.
Here.
Counselor McElroy.
Here.
Counselor Metcalf.
Here.
Counselor Prokop. Here. Counselor Tenbush.
Here.
Mayor Drinkline.
Here. Thank you very much for that. We are now at the first citizen and community group comment. One of our counselors has asked to speak first before we continue with this part of it. So I'm going to give the floor to Mike McGill.
Seems there's some members of the community that haven't had a chance to get to know me or my backstory, my background, and no one's reached out specifically to speak to me about it, but it seems they're spreading that around. They're surprised by it somehow. My background's not anything that I hide from. I've shared it openly in testimony that I've given at Adult and Teen Challenge when mentoring the men in recovery there to try to encourage them and see that there's hope, that you can be redeemed from the choices you made in the past. As a young child, I suffered some of the worst traumas you can imagine as a kid, from the ages of 7 to 9. And some of the coping mechanisms that came from those things led to really poor decisions. Starting about the age of 12 years old, I got into heavy drug addiction with heavy drugs. From that point till about 2012, I spent most of my life and during that period in and out of prisons. I've been to multiple prisons. And it wasn't until 2012 that I found something different to live for and decided to change my life. I don't let my past define me. It's not something that I've ever kept hidden from anyone. Anyone that's gotten a chance to know me knows my story and where I come from. I made a decision to change my life. And since I got out in 2016, that's what I've done. I came home. I've been a good father to my children, been a good husband to my wife. I stopped being a taker from the community and began being a giver and giving back. Since my time in 2016, I've mentored, I think, about 14 different men that have come out of incarceration to try to help them get a structure in their life and be successful in coming home. Some of them have done well, some of them have not, and they've gone back. That's where I came from and who I am. It's not something that I ever hid from or people are portraying as it's something that I've concealed. Anyone that knows me at my employer knows my whole story. Anyone that's close to me in my life knows my entire background. I'm an open book. So if you have any questions about where I come from or my background, feel free to reach out directly to me. You don't have to go online and spread things that you don't know and look for confirmation from places where I've volunteered mentoring, coaching, sending emails to them, asking them if they did a background check. Yes, they did a background check. And yes, I passed the background check because none of my charges were violent person-to-person crimes. None of my crimes were sexual in nature. I had property crimes and drug crimes that were directly from heavy drug addiction for many years. And that's not the life I'm living anymore. And it's not something I'm going to run from. It's not something that's going to cause me to step down from my position on the council. Being a convicted felon doesn't disqualify you from that. And thankfully, I serve someone that is a little bit more forgiving. And I have my redemption, and I have my faith in that. So I'll just leave it at that. I just want to get ahead of it. If anyone has any questions about me or my background, feel free to reach out. You can get my cell number anytime and give me a call. Happy to sit down with you and talk to you about it.
Okay, we'll continue with the first. It looks like I have Eric Lambert. Eric.
I don't normally do this kind of stuff, so bear with me here if I'm a little nervous. But when I first learned that Estacada was wanting to get rid of the DEI, it kind of broke my heart a little bit. I currently work in DEI and it's my passion. It's what I love doing. You're never going to be perfect at DEI and you're always going to just learn and grow. I feel like there's just a lot of misunderstanding going on right now in the news and just everywhere. And so diversity, equity, inclusion is much broader than hiring individuals from different backgrounds or respecting pronoun usage. DEI does not favor tokenism at all. Tokenism is a term that refers to organizations creating a superficial sense of equality and inclusiveness without the genuine efforts to promote diversity. So pretty much diversity hires, like it's illegal to do. This can manifest in hiring practices or media portrayals where individuals from marginalized groups are included merely to meet quotas rather than being appreciated for their unique contributions. While diverse reputation is crucial, true DEI initiatives also emphasize building an environment where everyone, regardless of background, has equal opportunities to feel respected and can thrive. Inclusion means creating environments where everyone feels valued and heard, not just counted. It emphasizes promoting collaboration, respect, and understanding among diverse groups. Equity helps ensure everyone receives the support they need to succeed, acknowledging that some individuals may face unique challenges or barriers that others do not. Ending DEI efforts in a small community will have several negative impacts. The suggestion of discontinuing DEI in Estacada directly undermines 3 of the city goals, and potentially all of them, but from what I researched, at least goals 2, 3, and 4, which is about community engagement, about economic growth, and then about preserving the essence of Estacada. These goals will become significantly more difficult to obtain if the DEI committee is dissolved. Ending DEI initiatives will limit opportunities for individuals from underrepresented groups, making it harder for them to access resources, feel valued, or participate fully in a community life. This will foster inequity, resentment, and division within our community. Additionally, it could damage the city's reputation and its ability to affect a diverse range of residents and businesses, ultimately stalling progress towards a more inclusive, successful future. Furthermore, embracing diversity enhances problem solving and innovation as individuals with varied experiences bring different perspectives and solutions. Without DEI, Estacada will miss out on these benefits and limit growth and development. A couple more sentences here. A lack of DEI will lead to limited workforce talent, stifled business innovation, decreased consumer spending, and additionally, cities perceived as unwelcoming or inadequate will miss out on investment opportunities such as grants. A lack of diversity and inclusion will also damage the reputation by reducing tourism and event opportunities. Legal and compliance costs may also rise in cities that face discrimination lawsuits or lose access to state funding tied to DEI-related initiatives. Lastly, without inclusive policies, home values may decline and economic development may slow, ultimately harming the city's health.
Okay, next we have Nicole Andrews.
Good evening. At the core of diversity, equity, and inclusion is community engagement. While the rhetoric, especially on the national level, has been about individuals obtaining positions not based on merit, but specific identifiers, the reality is when we workshop with you, the DEI committee last month, not one of you or even one member of the community could utter even one incident in which our community was impacted in such a way by our committee. In fact, listening to some members of council speak demonstrated that there are many of you who are ignorant to what diversity, equity, and inclusion is, why it would be beneficial to a rural community like ours, and what it looks like in action. Diversity, equity, and inclusion looks like a child with Down syndrome. Having her teachers, supporting staff, and classmates sit down to learn about Down syndrome, and that at their core, an individual with Down syndrome is no different from her other classmates. It looks like her classmates being excited to celebrate with her and take pictures with her. It looks like her entire class, her teachers, her principal, vice principal, and support staff writing letters to tell her that she matters and is an important part of their school. and hearing students say, "This is the best day ever." These students were not complaining by saying, "Why am I not being celebrated?" nor fear-mongering by saying that someone else is somehow getting an edge over them, like what the common rhetoric is with DEI misanthropes. If school teachers can figure this out, surely you can figure out a way as representatives. Our children deserve to grow up in a community where everyone is included. Mayor Drinkwine, you called the very idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion divisive at its core. But I would love for you to address this real-world example of what just happened last week at Rivermill Elementary and how it was divisive or evil or any of the other negative connotations that were used at last month's meeting. Dismantling the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee is extremely short-sighted and is a sign of poor vision for the city of Estacada, because as it grows, it will become more diverse with people who of all kinds of needs that will need to be supported and included in this community. So if you continue to cower behind this rhetoric that DEI is divisive, at least be brave enough to create something that will continue to strengthen, support, and include everyone in our community. Author Mia Carilla is accredited with saying that inclusion is not just inviting someone to sit at your table, it's believing that they belong there. No matter what you call it, I am here asking for a committee that ensures that everyone feels that they belong in our committee. In closing, I'd like to take a few more seconds just to read the letter written to my daughter. I handed it out to you so that you will have something to remind you that your decision does not just affect the here and now, but it affects the future of our city. And it says, "Dear Ezzy, from the very first day you walked into our class, you have brought us so much joy, laughter, and light to all of us. You have made such an impact in our class. We are all better because we have had a chance to learn from you. Thank you for being you and helping us celebrate the uniqueness in all of us. Thank you for your time."
Okay, do I have anybody online or wish to speak? Okay.
We do have Lisa Alves here to speak with the Reagan Christie Memorial Fund.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
get to that one. That's next.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, we got Christine, want to come up and speak on?
Actually, it's Lisa. Yes,
Oh.
Lisa, and is Delaney coming with you or no? If you want to. And we're welcoming them. They were here last year to talk about the memorial fund that they set up in honor of their daughter Reagan, our sister Reagan, daughter and sister, and we're invited to come back and give an update. So she's here to do
Great.
that.
Hey, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for welcoming me back. I do appreciate it. My name is Lisa Alves, and this is my daughter Delaney. We live out off Redland Road and have been part of the community here for about 18 years. The reason I'm here today is because I started a nonprofit called the Reagan Christie Memorial Fund in honor of my daughter Reagan, who passed away on Springwater Road on Memorial Day, May 31st, 2021. There were two other children in the car that were that passed away that day as well, two other students in our community. And you know, what a bummer. The young kids in our community are so vulnerable to our dark and curvy roads and all of the other tangibles that Mike kind of talked about that are out there that create vulnerabilities for our kids. So I wasn't going to go down that path, but I'm glad you said something about that. Anyway, after Reagan passed away, we had to have a place to put our grief. So we started we being my daughter Delaney and my husband Greg, we started the Reagan Christine Memorial Fund. And our mission really quickly is to provide scholarship awards and support community endeavors that offer resources to children in the Estacada and Lakeview, Oregon communities. Our missions include year-long fundraising in a loving and fun manner that keeps the living spirit of Reagan Christine in our hearts and home. Reagan was a really fun-loving kid. She was a goofball. If she could be talking over you at any given moment, she would have. And so with that, the kids that we want to help not only are underserved kids, or maybe kids that have obstacles at home that cause them to not be able to live up to their full potential. We want the kids that are going to be doing the right thing when nobody's looking. And so that necessarily isn't going to be the straight A student. You know, we really want to help the kids that need help to give them that extra push in life. How we do that is through a couple of fundraisers we do every year. The first one is the fundraiser around her birthday, which this year is May 17th. I've given all of you an invitation to come. It is a public event, so please feel free to spread the word. But during that event, we have live music from local families and other families that are coming from the Lakeview area, who we also support. We've got food, we've got a silent auction. We do all kinds of games and things for the children, face painting, and we also host a cornhole tournament, which is super fun. So if you're into that, please come. We also do a raffle every year, and I've also given you a flyer about our raffle. The tickets are $20 a piece, and it's a winner's choice this year. So we are raffling off a rifle, a pistol, or a Green Mountain Grill. So lots of stuff to choose from there. And then one of the things that we also do is bottle drop. Oregon Bottle Drop has their recycle program that they do. I did bring blue bags for anybody that would like to participate, but this allows us to fundraise all year long. And we are using your parking lot on April 12th. Thank you very much for that, to host an all-day bottle and fundraiser. So if you spread the word or doing some cleaning up around the house and you want to bring your bottles and cans, we'll take them off your hands. They don't have to be in a blue bag. Other than that, I mean, we talk about helping kids in our community, but these are some of the things that we've done really quick. And I've also given you a flyer on some of our impact, but it's a little bit dated. We did that at the end of last year. So so far we have awarded 7 individual scholarships to kids that are going to school. We are and have been able to renew those. So going forward, the kids will get them for all 4 years that they'll be attending college, or 2 years, whatever it is. They don't have to go to a 4-year college. We're also looking at kids that are maybe military driven or going into some kind of schooling that requires them to have tools or materials and things of that nature. We donate to the SAFE Act, which is a senior safe and sober party. We've donated often to the girls and boys that do the dance at Crescendo downtown that go to national competitions. We sponsor a Lake County Youth Mentor Program. That is, again, a program that serves under-resourced kids. We deal with 4-H. We buy animals at the fair. I know I'm over my time here, guys. Sorry. Some of the things that we also do that are a little off is this year we did donate some money to a mom who had lost her child. We helped with funeral expenses and to give her a little bit of time off work so that she can grieve. We donated to the Pregnancy Resource Center, and of course we adopted many families over Christmas this year. So we are really open to whatever the community needs. So if you ever feel like you're in a position and know of somebody that is in need, and it is a child in our community that could use help or their family needs help, we want to be able to hear about that. So anyway, thank you for your time. Also want to thank you for the grant that we were approved for this year. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all I have in front of me. Has anybody written in or? No? Okay. We are now at the consent agenda. If there's anybody that'd like to pull something out or go with it, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but it's item G on the Oakview and putting the speed limit down. My understanding was we were gonna change the speed limit to 20. And then
Let me pull it down into council business.
Yeah, we'll just
We'll have
pull
a
it out.
discussion in
Oh,
it
gotcha.
and we'll pull it out at this point, right?
We'll just add that down into council business at the end.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, minus that, has everybody had, Jonathan?
I don't want to pull anything out, but there's a comment that's going forward that needs to be represented, I believe, in this packet before we approve it. The planning commission, their applications are in this. And with that, they're going forward with 2 new members. But I thought it would be cool if we could take the time to acknowledge that the 2 members that are not going forward served the community for 30 years and some odd change, being Tom and Richard.
Yeah.
And I thought that that's certainly something worth acknowledging and taking the time to tell them although the committee chose to go a different direction going forward, and that there's some new and new members in town and new parents wanting to get involved and excited to jump in, that it is not lost on this council, the amount of time and commitment that it's appreciated. So
And that's Tom Sager and Richard Hartwig.
That's right.
thank you for
And let
clarifying.
them know that we have other committees open with openings right now, so hopefully they'll jump right back in.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted
Okay.
to make sure that we
Thank you
acknowledge.
for that
a
acknowledgement, yes.
Huge thank you for that
They
before.
served a long time.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and they appreciate that, so thank you. Would somebody like to make a motion on the consent agenda as it stands with G being moved to council business?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, we have a
Thank you.
first
Second.
and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we are at, wait, before we go any further, I have a proclamation here. I best look at that. I don't want to forget you. Sorry about that. It's Child Abuse Prevention Month, which is very important to all of us. I know, especially in our community, we want to make sure that we protect the youth. And I think this is a very important thing that we're talking about here. So I will read a proclamation if that's okay. And then we will go from there. The proclamation. Whereas children are vital to our city's future success, prosperity, and quality of life, as well as being our most vulnerable assets. And whereas all children deserve to have the safe, stable, nurturing homes and communities they need to foster their health, growth, and development. And whereas child abuse and neglect is a community responsibility affecting both the current and future quality of life of our community. And whereas communities can provide parents with the social support, knowledge in parenting and child development, and concrete resources they need to cope with the stress and the nature their children, ensure all children grow to their full potential. And whereas child abuse can be prevented when all community members become aware of the importance of supporting parents to raise their children in a safe, nurturing environment. And whereas effective child abuse prevention strategies succeed because of partnerships created among citizens, human service agencies, schools, faith communities, healthcare providers, civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, and the business community. And whereas the city of Estacada values the organizations, agencies, and community partners working to prevent child abuse and provide support resources to parents. Now, therefore, I do hereby proclaim April as Child Abuse Prevention Month and call upon all citizens in the community and the agencies, faith groups, medical facilities, elected leaders, and business to increase their participation in our efforts to support families, thereby preventing child abuse and strengthening the communities in which we live. So thank you. That's greatly appreciated. Okay, now if we could take a couple minutes, maybe get a photograph, and I will sign this proclamation.
Picture maybe in front of the sign and the flags.
Yeah, she could take a few minutes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me today. My name is Johnny Workman. I'm with Children's Center in Oregon City. And Children's Center is a nonprofit child advocacy center. We serve all of Clackamas County. And our main focus is on providing child forensic interviews and medical examinations for children who have faced harm. Mostly abuse cases who come to us for evaluation and assessment, and then we can help them get connected with resources for healing or help guide them through the legal process if that's the course they decide to take. And in addition to the interventive services we have for those families who are in active crisis, we do have our prevention team, which is the team that I'm on. And our campaign for April just seems to get bigger and bigger every year. And this year we are focusing on getting the word out a lot. We want all of Clackamas County to know that the focus of April is to help prevent child abuse in our communities. And there's a variety of ways we can do that. We're hosting a learning series every week for the month of April. We're doing different training in different cities throughout the county, focusing on things like preventing child sexual abuse, online safety, raising resilient kids and fostering resiliency in your children, and that kind of thing. We're also preventing child abuse in more fun ways, not just classes. We have family events where we want families to be able to come and connect within their family units and in their community, so that as they go throughout their days and they can have confidence in their community, rely on those safe adults who we hope will have the confidence to speak up if they see something and say something. So again, thank you for having me today and for the proclamation. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, we are now at department and committee reports. Huh?
I've got nothing.
You got nothing? Okay. Anybody else have anything from their
I was
group?
gonna be speaking to mine, so.
Okay. Anybody else? Go ahead, John.
It's not I didn't go to a committee or anything like that, but I went to the fire department strategic planning event. And they had had a outside consultant in there to help them develop some goals and strategies and that kind of stuff. It was just outstanding. From my experience with the TP, the traffic public safety, we were used to reading the chief's report, and so just the amount of training that they're doing all the time, the camaraderie the group shows, it was just really very satisfying meeting. And it was a 3-day event. I was just there for a couple of hours, but it was outstanding.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I went to the Traffic and Safety Committee, and Chief Mendoza gave his crime report in the beginning. They asked for a comparison last time, and the closest comparison that they could do was between Happy Valley and Wilsonville, because they work with them. Happy Valley and Wilsonville are about 5 times larger than Estacada. So if you multiply by 5, Estacada is still lower than the other communities that we can compare to. When it comes to all the crime, basically everything. So we're doing pretty good there. Traffic and Safety wants to promote neighborhood watch. They'd like to set up a first aid, CPR, AED, self-defense class, possibly blood drive. They're focusing on school zone crossing, safety, lighting, ADA upgrades for the mobile impaired. Road improvements, I guess the number one priority right now is speeding. So obviously we're trying to take steps in lowering speed miles per hour, whatnot, at least on Oakview, and putting in stop signs over there on Broadway. They're wanting a light audit, and they're looking, and their Safe Routes to School program is a partnership action plan. They're looking for improvements for kids in the walking distance within the 1 mile radius of the schools. So we were there for several hours. That was kind of sum it up real quick.
Thank you. Is that all from council? All right.
Okay.
City managers report.
All right. Do you want to start with what we can-
You want to start?
I would like to start because I apparently cut and pasted my presentation because it is no longer on my computer. So it is only on the screen, and hopefully I can read that far away. I just wanted to give everybody an update for tonight's council meeting. First thing I wanted to call out is the 4th of July fireworks show that the fire district is going to sponsor on the 4th of July. They are looking for donations right now, and I think they just did a pancake fundraiser on Saturday. There's a group of folks that are working on those fundraisers. The city's making a donation, and I just wanted to give that a little more bandwidth to get it out there to the community. Anybody who is looking to donate, could be a company, could be an individual, that is coming up. Next slide. All right, and I wanted to give you the rest of my report focuses on the wastewater facility. And I wanted to let you know that the project went out to bid on March 19th, and the bid will be open for 4 to 5 weeks. So it'll be the middle towards to the end of April. They started at 4 weeks, and potentially if there's questions that come back or revisions, then they'll push it out another week. But by mid-May, they will have, it'll close, and then it'll take them a couple of weeks, at least a couple of weeks, to go through all the bids that come in and figure that out. And that will give us time to resolve any value engineering issues that we need to do based on what the bids are. And then at the council meeting on June 9th, the Sladen and Kennedy Jenks representatives and our partners will come and present that to the council. And so we'll know before that if if I'm sweating, you'll know it's like we're working hard on getting this to a good number. But yeah, that's kind of the timeline going forward. And next slide, please. Just wanted to share some of the challenges that we're facing. If anybody is paying attention to the market out there, it's a difficult time to be putting something out to bid, but we are not the only one in this boat. And so we're learning from what other larger agencies are doing also. So the biggest challenge right now is how to deal with the possible upcoming tariffs. So we have 3 options, and I wanted to share this with you because we're going to make a recommendation. Staff is working with the consultants to make a recommendation on how we're going to handle this to limit our risk. And I wanted to share that with you, A, so that you're not surprised later, and B, if you have any recommendations, I'm happy to take those tonight, or you can call me tomorrow if something comes to mind. But first of all, option 1 would be to have direct the bidders to include all the tariffs in effect on the bid date. And that means that they're taking on all the risk, of what all the tariffs will be. And so that's going to drive the cost of our bids up. Secondly is to say, don't include the tariffs as of, anything after January 31st, don't include those, because and that means that we're taking the risk. And so the ones that do have effect, we'll have to do change orders for or something. But our recommendation is actually option 3, which is a hybrid. And we're going to tell them which tariffs to include and which ones to exclude. And then the ones, and then what we're wrong on, we'll make sure that if they do have to pay a tariff that drives their cost up, they'll have to provide proof of that, and we'll have to do a change order. But we want to have them take on some of the risk, but also us. We want to limit their risk. Otherwise, we'll just get a bunch of really high bids. Next slide. Oh, so there's the recommendations that we're making, that I'd like to make. Whoops, can we go? Let's go back one, because I forgot to do part 2 of that. So it's the hybrid option, and then additionally, we're going to recommend picking a date 1 or 2 weeks before the bid date as an exclusion cutoff. So rather than calling January 31st as the cutoff, we'll say a week or 2 before, whatever's in place then, that's what they're going to bid on. Because if we run it right up to the last second, then they can't process it that quickly. So that's the plan for now. And next slide. Which to keep? Okay, which tariffs to keep? The ones that we think we should include are tariffs that are already in place, but they're just an increased percentage, because the market should know how to price that, since it's there. They were already planning to include it. It's just a different percentage, and it's likely to stay. We'll also include the global steel and aluminum tariff, and that's 25% on all steel and aluminum, but we are required to use, we're under AIS, American Iron and Steel Act. And so that's probably not going to impact us that much, but we'll leave it in there just in case there's things that it might impact us. What we would exclude are new tariffs on all goods, because the market is struggling with pricing for those new tariffs. And many feel that they're likely to be reduced or removed. If the contractors are required to include them, and then before they actually, because we're talking about a 2-year project here, so they might not be buying the stuff for another year or so. And at that point, if the tariffs aren't in place, it's very hard to claw back that cost. And so then we would just be paying extra for what we didn't really need to do. So those we will exclude. That is the plan. And if we make them include those new tariffs, all the new tariffs, it's impossible to guess. They're just gonna have to increase the cost of, or the price of their bid to lessen their risk. So that is the plan. And I'd like to get any feedback, if you have feedback or if you have any other information that you think we should be considering when we're making this plan.
Yeah, one, thank you for this. I appreciate where you went with this on the tariff conversation and such. I got two things. One, backing up a little bit would be my first question with this bid process and stuff, completion date. Is it still
Right?
2020? Where are we at?
It's 27 months from when we can start. We're figuring we're gonna get started probably in October. Things go really, really well. We could start in August. So we're looking at the end of 27, end of 27.
Okay, so
The 2.5 years.
the community needs to be potentially ready, let's just with delays and different things to look at seeing this in 2028 realistically by the time maybe it's
That could happen.
operational.
That
and
could
and
happen.
goes through all the code. Okay. I just was curious where we were on that. And then I understand holding the steel tariff for safety factor kind of, but walk me through the American Steel Standard doesn't, because it's a government building, everything nuts, bolts, that has to be manufactured
It
here
does.
anyway, right? So really that's a red line.
It kind of is, unless there is something that they can only get from someplace else. And so if they have to import it, they'd have to get an exclusion, and then, but it would not impact us very greatly. But we do know about it. We know it's there. We think it's staying. So we thought we'd leave it in case somebody's gonna bid on something that they would have to get a exclusion for to be able to bring it in.
Right. I guess with that, I like where you're going with this. My suggestion or my thought would be just that we need some kind of cost projection on that as well. Like, I would like to see that number, what they would project with tariff and with what little pieces they would think might not be covered, because when you look at that as a whole, that's a terrifying thing to think, considering how much steel goes into something. But like what you're saying, even as far as what I understand to be nuts, bolts, and washers even
Yeah,
have to be
everything is,
manufactured. So it
right.
would be extremely minimal, that amount that we're technically worried. So
Yes.
just in the interest of showing the community that we're not going to be taken advantage of, I would like to see a prediction on what we think that would be, so that we
Okay.
can explain that for them as well.
Yes, I can ask that question. If we have so I think what you're asking me is if there's an estimate on what we might have to pay
Yeah,
on
what
tariffs
that
for.
would be, and
Okay.
what are the size of those items realistically? I know that some of that would come as a surprise, but they might have an idea of what that would look like typically from other stuff they built, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
they should. Okay.
Any other questions? Sorry. Mike.
Is the proposal that the things that are defined as being included are not open to a change order, and the items that we're telling them to exclude are open to a change order?
Yes,
What's the benefit of including anything then?
we could exclude that. It's just that we thought that, well, we'd have to do it's not contingency. It would be like I can't remember what he called it, an assurance or something. We'd have to have a fund set aside in the budget that would account for what we think that's going to be. So if we just have them bid that,
We're not getting it back though, right?
correct.
Okay, so
So
for the
maybe
change
just-
orders, they're gonna provide the material cost that has a tariff increase on it,
Mm-hmm.
and they're gonna get paid extra for it.
If they can, as they
Then
show us what their. cost
Where's the
is.
upside for the city in including any of it, other than defining the higher price on the front end and making sure that we're paying 100% of the higher price?
Yeah, the only upside would be that we do think those are gonna stay, and so it would already be included in the price, but it is a risk. What if they don't? What if they don't stay? So I mean, I'm having the discussion tomorrow with the engineers and with Slade, and I could just
Seems like it'd be better to just have the tariffs not included,
make
have
them
the estimates
account
for the
it.
tariffs
Uh-huh.
that are applied to it that the city accounts for in the budget.
Mhm.
And then we're preparing for the extra cost. We can put that in the cost calculations, and then the city, I mean, we're not taking any less risk by including
Right.
the tariffs on the front end. It doesn't make sense
Right.
to,
And they're
mean-
already in place, so like, say they're already at 10% tariff, they're
Yeah.
just going up to 20, so we'd probably just include that 10%.
include the 10, yeah.
And then estimate what the 20% would be and
Because then we're gonna get a materials receipt produced for anything that's a change order. We're gonna see the material cost
And
with
okay.
how it was impacted by the tariff and the additional cost. There's no
Mhm.
downside to the city in that.
Correct.
It is what it is, whether we know it on the front end or not, whatever the cost is in this setup, we're
Mhm.
gonna pay it all anyways. We're just gonna say, we're gonna pay it no matter what on half of it, even if the price goes down.
Mhm.
And the other half, I don't know what the percentages are, but, and then on the other portion, we're gonna still pay all of the tariff increases. They're just gonna have to
Right.
supply a change order, rather than just supply a change order
For the.
for everything.
Okay,
And then anything that's something that we don't think is gonna go away, keep in the budget as an estimate as part of a contingency budget. You could have that tariff, that extra cost budgeted for. That would make more sense to me than giving away a bunch of stuff that we assume it's gonna stay high on.
okay. Yes, I will bring that up with them tomorrow. What's the benefit of including any, okay. Just to make a firm accounting for all the tariffs that would be above, okay. Is everybody kind of feel
Yeah,
good about that?
I
Okay,
like that.
Yeah, that a list of what we would expect.
yeah. Okay. All right, thanks for weighing in on that. Next slide, I think, is my end. Yep. Any other questions about anything going on, or? And Peter, did you have anything to share, or?
Sorry. I was just wondering what was going on with Hillway since I haven't seen any activity in a little bit.
Yes, they paved the end of it, I believe, because they had to do the ADA ramps and sidewalks, and they're waiting for better weather. So as soon as we get out of this rain deluge, they will be in there paving it again. I'm not sure what the final date is. I could look that up.
Typically it has to be
but-
50 degrees and rising. So when they're starting to lay, it has to be 50 degrees and climbing.
Mhm. So hopefully soon we'll turn the corner and actually get into spring weather.
Any other questions? John?
Just because I know we're gonna revisit this soon in public comment, I'm sure. Do we have any updates or information on Lakeshore?
The Lakeshore Apartments.
Yes.
I do know that we haven't issued building permits yet. We're looking at like when is a final deadline when they'd have to have all of when they have to get them issued before they'd have to start over. That's about all I know, unless Peter, you want to weigh in on anything else?
Yeah, so our building permit systems through the state of Oregon, it's called Estella. And we've noticed what we believe are some glitches in that program that we're trying to clarify with the state. The state's language is not necessarily clear and objective. Like it's not clear and objective, which is kind of counter to how our land use system is supposed to work. So we're seeking some clarity from them, the way that I interpret the language, and we've had some conversations with the mayor, the way that he interprets the language and the way that our staff interprets the language is different than our building official. And so we're trying to get to some clarity with the state since it's their language. We have reached out to them. They've responded, but that response was basically that they were elevating the inquiry up the chain. So when we have that answer, it will help to provide some clarity for us. We are aware of some flyers that have purporting to change that from a short-term rental to a long-term rental. That would be a change of use under our code. So we're making the owners aware that they would need to permit all of that because, with a short-term rental is less than 30 days and subject to our transient lodging tax and other the counties as well. Long-term rental is not. So although they might look the same, they're not the same use. One is a residential and the other is a transient short-term rental use.
Was the permit submitted through Excella?
Yeah,
think
so the most recent permit that was submitted through Acela was submitted in January, I believe.
It was submitted online. It didn't get brought in, walked in and handed in person.
Yeah, I guess for clarity purposes here, because I'm a little confused, so they were issued a 9-month deadline.
They met that.
They did. I thought that did not meet.
So that was the November deadline.
September- That's when
Excuse
September and
me.
November.
I believe it was November.
Okay.
Um,
It was, yeah.
and then the Acela system changes the date every time a permit is submitted. So essentially, I would calculate the 6-month period as starting from the November date. The Acela system resets that 6-month timeline each time there is a submission. So, and again, that's the state system. And so we're trying to get clarity on that. Additionally, the state has some language that talks about good faith efforts, and good faith is not a clear and objective standard. So like my definition of good faith and your definition of good faith and what would constitute it could be completely different. In the past, and I have emails to the applicant from last year stating this, with the RV facility, what we required is, I'll call it substantial completion, was that all of their groundwork, all their utilities, all of their paving needed to occur in order to grandfather them in to demonstrate substantial completion. That is not necessarily how our building official has interpreted it, and how our building official is reading the state's requirements. So that's why we're seeking clarity from the state as to why they would have a standard that's not clear or objective.
With BCD or
Yeah.
Building Codes Division, yeah.
The building codes division.
So I thought, and again, maybe I just misunderstood, but so we gave them, the planning commission gave them 9 months. Right?
To submit
That-
engineering,
Okay,
correct.
and then that came back, but it did not pass fire, correct?
So it did not, initially when it came back, it did not meet the fire departments, or excuse me, the special districts standards, and it showed buildings that were in the city's utility right of way.
And was that before or after the 9-month?
That was before the end of the 9-month.
Okay, I guess just for clarity, what I'm asking is, I thought.
it
that
was
the-
deemed complete.
There-
I remember in the meeting, it was deemed a complete submission prior to the deadline, if
Mhm.
that's what
Right.
you're asking.
Yes. that's
Yeah.
And then they
for
started
clarity
another
purposes.
deadline.
Yeah.
Of which is what we're trying to figure out right now. When
So
does
the
that?
way that I would calculate the 6 months would be 6 months from the date of that.
Well, we're
And
giving them a 14-month running grandfather them in opportunity here when we have a new code there that they didn't meet in the temperature. I'm just struggling to understand why we can't enforce that. This is now a new application, which needs to follow the new code.
because the state system gives them at a minimum 6 months after they have a complete,
Application.
right, after they have the complete application, then they have 6 months.
Under the good faith, of course. And we're having to determine what that good faith is.
For this, I'll digress for the sake
Oh,
of
yeah.
moving the meeting forward. I'm not challenging. I'm just asking for clarity because it's
Right, so
confusing to me.
the way that it sounds like you're interpreting this and the way that I interpret it are the same.
Okay,
What we have though is we have ambiguous language from the state that references good faith efforts. And we have the state's own system that recalculates their 6-month deadline anytime there's a submission into the system. So if we're going to pull if the person is beyond the timeline and we're going to pull it, and yet they, according to the state's Acela program, that the state calculated it is they would need to do the work by date X, then, you know, we have to give them notice. It took us a little while to figure out, okay, why is this deadline moving? And the reason it moved is because there was submission in January. So, we met, I came out last week, for the planning commission, then we met afterwards in order to talk through these issues. And because this is a state's requirement and not ours, I need for them to weigh in, but, you know, how they are calculating this to me is counterintuitive, because frankly, if all you have to do is resubmit in order to have an extended deadline, then why would you even have a deadline to begin with?
Has it been locked? Excel been locked?
Has
Clackamas County, most jurisdictions, you can't upload until the jurisdiction gives you permission to upload. Clackamas County, when it's going through a cycle through the workflow and project docs, which uses Excel, you're not allowed to upload files on your own until they give you access. Once it's completed a cycle through all the departments that need to sign off on it, then they're given access to respond and complete tasks. And that's the only time that they're allowed to respond. Is our system not matching that?
I am not sure how the system works on that.
Hmm.
Like if they are locked out right now until it's
I'm just saying
sent back to
to
them.
avoid the question or the problem coming up again. Has it been resolved that they don't have access to, you should only be able to upload once the complete review's done. Otherwise, if you look at, I can sit down with you and show you the system in Clackamas County.
Mhm.
It just doesn't allow you to do that
So
on the user side.
we need to talk to Alan and Mads in order
Mads,
to
yeah.
make that determination.
So would somebody have had to allow that? for
No, I
January?
just don't think we have it set up in our system. There are some jurisdictions where you can't upload, but most of them you can mid-cycle.
I'd have to check on that because I think what they would do is like when they went through the reviews and then there's something that gets uploaded and says, hey, we still need this information. And then they're allowed to resubmit into the system. I think that's how, I'm not
Yeah.
sure if that's how you're asking if it should work, but that's how I think it works here.
Stop by and take a look at it.
Okay, we'll talk, yeah.
So when it resets, does it reset a new 6 months?
So when it was submitted in January, it reset 6 months.
In Excel.
Mhm.
Yes, in a cell.
It sounds like we need some more information all around, so.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I again, we're trying to troubleshoot this. We met last week. We made the inquiries last week to the state. It has been kicked up the chain, but it's also spring break, so I don't know when we could. And as I said to the mayor, you know, I think that this may spark another policy question for the state, is like, why would they have a standard that's not clear and objective? How are we supposed to calculate good faith? It's like it's what traditionally there's been something called like the reasonable man standard for something like a noise ordinance. So if a reasonable person would find the noise offensive, then that's a noise violation. And that was unconstitutional. And that's why now we have machines that measure the decibels, and cities that have a noise ordinance do it based on decibel instead of like reasonable person. And in my mind, a standard like good faith, or another one that sometimes gets thrown around as public good, there's no clear and objective way to measure that. So, you know, it is inquiring from the city. Does that demonstrate good faith? Your good faith trying to move that, or is continually submitting something that doesn't meet the fire marshal's requirements? You know, if you're submitting it and it doesn't meet the sprinkler requirement that is required, then given the fire apparatus that we have here, it seems like that wouldn't be good faith because you're not meeting the minimum standard. So I think that, but it's the state's language, not mine. So I think that we'll get information that will inform our future decisions, and we'll update you as soon as we have it. And I would hope that would be in the near term, and not just for this application, but for any application in the future, because for applications to be successful, people need to understand what the rules are and they need to be clear and objective. And that's how we get to something fair. So, and again, we hadn't had this come up in the past because other projects just happened timely. I had never had to go through the state's structural code in order to determine what is a required submission, because normally people include all of the required things. So this has been a learning experience for all of us.
All right, John, did that answer your question?
As well as it can.
Okay, all right. Jonathan, did you have something else you wanted to add?
Well, just to Councilman McElroy's point was, so January, they would have been allowed to, that would have been them responding to October is the way that you're saying that, or would somebody have had to have opened that and
It- it
allowed them? in
Sounds
January?
like there was a submission that had a task created in November. They responded to a task incompletely without addressing the issue in January. But when they submitted the submission, when they uploaded the submission on Excel, it reset the time. I don't know the
So,
specifics.
so my understanding is they submitted plans that no longer had a building in our utility right of way, which is good because you can't build in our utility right of way. And this is right of way that's in use. It's not like it's reserved or right of way for future. We have pipes in that right of way. So that was one of the issues that was flagged. They submitted new plans that don't show the building in the right of way, as I understand it, but they still don't, what they are suggesting they can use doesn't meet the fire health safety regulations, which of course is critically important. And jurisdictions that approve stuff that doesn't meet the fire life safety take on substantial liability if there is a event. So, and I can think of a jurisdiction that did that recently, and there's really no way to unring that bell. So, we kind of are where we are. The things that are within our control that we can control, we're doing. And then as far as getting clarity from the state and maybe flagging this issue, because maybe the state's not even aware that this is an issue. That's how hopefully we'll get to a good outcome.
Thank you. All right, very good. All right. All right, we'll move on to council business at this point. First off on council business is going to be G of the consent agenda that we've pulled down. And that was your question. Now would be the time to bring your.
Okay, so my understanding was that on Oakview Lane, we were gonna lower the speed limit from 25 to 20. We're gonna leave it like that for 30 days or whatever, and then do another speed study at that time. And then see what we get. When I was reading the packet, it said something about installing some
Right.
kind of thing that,
radar speed feedback sign, a permanent one. 'Cause I thought that was what the council had intended, but if I misunderstood.
I thought that's what we discussed too.
Yeah, me too.
to actually put that in, it was like $4,200 or something like that.
Prior to knowing whether the speed limit's an issue.
Well, or, what if we decide to go with the speed bump? Cause there was some support for the speed humps at that time. So I'm not sure spending $4,200 for that radar thing.
It could always be moved and utilized elsewhere in the city.
Well, and I talked with the city manager about putting a slip in. They could make it so we could take it out and use it in other areas as we move along versus putting a $4,200 thing permanently in the ground and having to rip it right back out. So.
All right. That answers my
Does that
question.
satisfy your?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Jonathan.
Okay.
You're saying you want a mobile one again?
Well, it's
That's
not
right.
really a mobile per se.
Just a sleeve.
It's just a
Okay.
sleeve that
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can pull it out at
That's-
some time. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so
I was
address,
just clarifying that.
yeah, well, that's good.
Then we'd still need a motion and a second and a vote for that
For that individual
resolution,
item.
for the resolution.
I
right?
move to approve resolution 2025-005, a resolution authorizing the placement of stop signs on North Broadway at Northwest 10th Avenue and authorizing speed reduction from 25 to 20 on Southeast Oakview Lane from Southeast 4th to East First.
Okay, we have a first, do I have a second?
Second.
First and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, urban renewal presentation, John LaGarza.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mayor Drinkwine and council, and great to be back here this evening to see all of you again. We were going to cover this topic in our strategic goal setting and back here to do this tonight. And we've also presented this to the Economic Development Commission, and I'll talk about that a little as we go on here. But again, some of you may know about urban renewal, some of you may not. This is kind of a, bear with me, we're going to go through about 40 slides here to just, it's Urban Renewal 101 here tonight. So next slide too, please, eh? So tonight I'm going to talk about what is urban renewal, what are some of the ways that an urban renewal district is funded, debunking myths around urban renewal. You currently have an urban renewal here. It's been a very successful urban renewal here. It's getting ready to sunset. Talk about some success stories around the state of Oregon. Several cities have urban renewal. It's a very well-used tool. Benefits to Estacada and some of the next steps here. So next slide, please. So again, as I pointed out, you have existing urban renewal here. It's getting ready to sunset in about 1.5 to 2 years here. And one of the things that most cities will do is they'll start to look at a potential future area to study for an urban renewal and do kind of an assessment of what was the successes of the existing urban renewal that we had there. Next slide, please. So this is a state authorized program, and it really allows cities to fund improvements, really to help you to spur economic development and think about those future property gains in that area without raising current taxes. Next slide, please. There's basically 3 phases that occur in an urban renewal. The first phase, which is really the area creation, and that's the boundary that we'll be talking about tonight within your city. And in that city area, there's basically a tax base that we'll look at that becomes a frozen base. Then we look at, from that frozen area, what it can be some of the improvements that can take place within that boundary there. And what happens from there is then at the end of the day, those funds go into that area, the improvements take place, and then the realization of you have new improved assets within your community. And that stays on for perpetuity of how revitalizing dollars into that area. Next slide, please. So for example, this is kind of the area of your existing urban renewal looking at right now. A city cannot have any more than 25% of the total assessed value or an acreage that can be designated there. And the current property value within this area is calculated, it's recorded, and that becomes your baseline for future comparisons from that standpoint moving forward there. Next slide, please. And then from there, as the property values increase in that area, that additional tax revenue can help to fund improvements within the area. So the growth-based funding doesn't raise the current taxes. The funds from taxes stay within that area here to help you promote projects within inside there. Next slide there. Those improved areas attract additional investment that help you overall enhance your community values. Benefits go on extending from that area. Just think of the economic vitality and the quality of life. You've had success with your street projects out here and some storefronts and improvements that you've done here. That's all been funded through urban renewal projects here, though. Next slide, please. So really, you're looking at targeting revitalization, focus on specific areas. It's a collaborative opportunity for the community to participate. It's self-sustaining, so any future gains that come in, it's not a new tax. It's a state authorized program, and it does not require approval of other taxing districts. And it's a versatile tool to fund different sets of projects that can help you meet community goals there. Next slide, please. So the way urban renewals districts work is you can help secure bonds and loans to really make larger investments up front there. So think of you're pulling your cash flows back to the present values, what happens from those property values coming in the future there. And that really helps you to identify projects in the future to help you not have to wait for that tax revenue coming in for 10, 20, or 30 years there. Next slide, please. So we'll talk about some of the urban renewal funding mechanics here. So again, it's tax incremental financing, and it allows the city or a county to capture the future tax growth within that defined area. This is a unique structure. Urban renewal allows public entities to fund improvements without raising tax. It is not a new tax. And a lot of people want to think it's tax is not a new tax. So I'll stop there because it's a lot to absorb. Any questions, and I'll move on from here if there is
Okay, any questions on urban renewal so far?
so far.
No?
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. All right. So next slide here. So think of it as, you know, on the left in the slide up here, you just have natural growth and you get your tax bill and you have all these different taxes and you paying, you know, you're paying the county tax, you're paying fire tax, you're paying different taxes, right? Once you put that boundary in effect, right, at that base, at the frozen base, those taxes stay within and they go towards projects within that district area, that boundary there. So really go to the next slide, please. So that existing tax base is frozen. So we think of the area wherever your area is, those current property bases are frozen. Those districts still get the revenue from that frozen base. What happens is any improvements that we do inside there, those funds stay within the urban renewal district, allowing you to do future projects there. So next slide, please. So after the adoption, taxes continue to grow, normally 3% here in Oregon. We are seeing some compression in some cities that's taking place there. But actually what happens, there's a natural increment increase over time. And those taxes actually help you be able to do those future construction and improvements within that urban renewal district there. Next slide, please. So think of it as, you know, not having leakage within your city. So by doing an urban rural area and creating that boundary, you're keeping those property taxes within that area to help revitalize that area, invest in infrastructure or other projects that you may think that are needed in this area to bring your future for economic vitality, whether they're future projects, there can be a numerous different opportunities that can be done within an urban rural district there. So next slide, please. Again, I put this up here because it really helps folks to just think about, on the bottom here, you can see the homes on the far right there, right? So if you don't have an urban renewal district, a lot of cities, what'll happen is, you know, you're going to do sidewalk improvements from street to street, or maybe you got a small storefront grant. You just don't have the funds to be able to do larger projects in a more timely manner. So you're really, if you look at the slide on the top, you're pulling that increment financing back to the present day, and you're able to go out and work with financial institutions to secure bonds or loans to help fund those projects that you would want to do in these areas here. Next slide, please. And again, this just kind of restates that. So you're thinking of how you can spur that investment in property sooner than later and be able to help your city advance quickly there from that standpoint there. So that upfront investment really helps those areas to grow there. Next slide, please. So, you know, a lot of times we have myths that come up around urban renewal. And again, it's a great city, and I would educate anyone to go on to, you know, check some of the cities, but you know, there's 240 cities in Oregon, and most of them have an urban renewal agency. So, I mean, it's a very, again, there's only so many tools within the toolbox, and we're, you know, every city is challenged with revenue and opportunities, but it's a great tool to think about. But again, it's important that everyone understands that, next slide, please, that, you know, what our urban renewal do, does that raise the tax rates? No, it's just again, redirects a portion of the natural increment in that area into that area. So it's not a new tax or an extra tax. Next slide there. This is the biggest one we hear a lot of time. Oh, my schools are going to lose their revenue. Well, that's not the case in Oregon. So in Oregon, schools do not lose their external tax matter. In fact, the state trues up all school districts that have urban renewal districts. It comes out of a separate fund. So school districts are always trued up there. It's even more important in new developments generally increase the enrollment. So you think about that as that happens, you're able to, your school districts, as you revitalize an area, you have more income from those property taxes, and it's better for your schools in the long run there too. Next slide there. We get a lot of questions around fire, police, and parks. Do they temporarily forgo? But they forgo at the frozen base any increment, but they still get their frozen base. They still receive that, the fire, the police stations, and the parks districts, if you don't have a parks district here. But then you have to realize sometimes that, you know, once that district is sunset, that incremental value that you increased, they will get that for the rest of the perpetuity from having an urban renewal in place. So it's a great benefit for communities there. Next slide, please. How does this affect outside the boundaries? A lot of times what you'll see is outside your urban growth boundary, you'll see people starting to do improvements. So it spurs outside. So there's actually a benefit around your district area. You'll see improvements that will take place because of what you've done within your area there. So Next slide, please. We get this from, a lot of people about community engagement is very important when you go through an urban renewal process. There's regular meetings, there's survey, there's public output. Again, we met with the Economic Development Commission. They approved, wanted us to recommend to council to study in a new urban renewal district. It's a great tool from that standpoint. During that process, what will happen is you would set up a technical advisory committee. They would provide input around a boundary and future areas to think about, to consider, to model, like 1 to 3 areas. And then that would come forward to the council for, to basically be doing a feasibility study from that standpoint there. So it's there's a lot of participation, open houses to different types of thoughts and where it would be from that standpoint. So it's a great tool. Next slide, please. Again, it's urban renewal is good for communities. It's vital for infrastructure. A lot of communities here in Oregon, they lack curb, street gutter, water line improvements. That's a challenge in small communities, and being able to identify those is important. We see a lot of Main Street programs around storefront opportunities or grants for businesses. It's also a great way to think of, acquiring property in the future as the city grows. So those are some of the tools that we see that come out of these urban renewal plans there. Next slide, please. Okay, some success stories here. Urban renewal, again, I've talked about infrastructure, Main Street, and recovery. I'll hit on these 3 here. So Wilsonville. So if you've been over to Wilsonville on the west side, Billabong community, this was all done with urban renewal. So all the infrastructure in there was done with the urban renewal. And as that increment increased, it helped them do a lot of the road work where you see Bo Beckman Road, Barber Road, and Wilsonville Road. So that's an infrastructure project. Next slide, please. We all been through Sisters, right? Great storefront, great business. I mean, you guys we're doing a fantastic job here, what's happening here, but think of like that culture and those commercial and streets improvements and those open spaces. A lot of that was funded through urban renewal, the City of Sisters there too. Next slide. And then talent, urban renewal can be used to help business owners when fire recovery programs here. This is helping a business owner that lost her business in a fire to help recover and be able to restart again there too. So next slide here. So thinking for the community of Estacada, again, next slide here. Opportunities to think about areas where you can help get your infrastructure improvements done here, connection within your town, business revitalization areas there. Again, grants can be done, wayfinding, storefront, signage programs, and then thinking about land acquisition opportunities there too. And sometimes you can have parks or trails that could be included within urban renewals areas too, from that standpoint there. Your lakeside, doing some work down along the shoreline is a great example to think about there. Next slide. Again, I can't stress enough on infrastructure. Every city's, challenged with old sewer lines, water lines. You've talked about water tracking, how do we do that? And in some of those areas, it's important to think about metering. Those are all important things to think about in the future for infrastructure needs or extending the street. That's important to opportunities that you can identify within an urban renewal plan there. Next slide, please. Main Street focus. You have a Main Street program here that's doing, it's, very thriving. Continue to build on that, right? Continue to look at like where you would do that in other parts and how you would connect the city is a great opportunity to identify those programs within an urban renewal there. Next slide. And again, land acquisition. This can be great. So a lot of times cities will have land that's set dormant. It's a way for an urban renewal agency to acquire that land, identify it as repositioning, public-private partnerships. It's a great opportunity to make a mechanism for a tool to reset that and move it forward for development there. Potential here for City of Estacada, 25% is about 96 acres. The plan can be anywhere from 10 to 30 years. It's a great opportunity for the council to explore from that standpoint. It's a great tool there. And then the next slide, I'll stop right there. So I know it's a lot, but it's an exciting tool. And like I said, the Economic Development Commission, they're very supportive of it. They voted to recommend to council to look at doing a study on another urban renewal area And I think the other thing too that would be important is to do an assessment of the work that's been done to really think about telling the story of what you have done from there. So,
Jerry, you have a question?
Yeah, so if we do another urban renewal district, does it have to be like a continuously attached area, or can we have like a section of town here, a section of town here, and a section of town over here? Does it have to be at one continuous, area, or can we section it off to different?
normally you would cherry stem and connect those. So yes, I would say want to try to keep that. We are seeing some cities doing some one-offs, but I would recommend the city here to keep this all contiguous right now.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on urban renewal? No. All right.
Oh,
Okay.
and I did want to say to the Economic Development Commission that they did recommend to council to do put some budgeting in there for a hotel market study this year. So just wanted to give you that update too there, Mayor and council. So yeah.
I think that's great.
Thank you for having me here this evening too.
No, we thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
On the
So-
backside of that note, like I said, the downtown is proof what urban renewal can do. I've been here since the beginning of ours, and we're nearing the end of ours. It's shown that Broadway and Main Street, under the amount of population that we have, could have never been done in the time frame that we did that without urban renewal. As long as you're responsible with their urban renewal, there are things that aren't missed that have shown people who have used urban renewal in a way that has been destructive to their economic stability. California is a good example. So there can be bad things that happen with urban renewal, but we have not been that way. We've been very responsible with our urban renewal and paying it back. So it is a great program to use in our circumstance. But there are downsides, and you can read about it online if you want to take a look at all of urban renewal and what it is. So just keep that in mind. Melanie?
Yeah, I was just gonna suggest if this seems like like we should keep going forward. Some next steps would be to direct staff and John to draft a report on the current district, like kind of a wrap-up report that talks about, where we started, the projects that were done. It kind of puts that all in a nice little packet for people to be able to read and understand what was accomplished. Also, so a report on the current district, putting together that technical advisory committee or a task force. John could start reaching out. We want somebody from fire district, somebody from school district, different businesses. I'm not sure who all you
Yeah,
would.
to do the feasibility.
Yep,
I'd recommend doing your report and then doing your feasibility study.
the maps and the
Maps and the
modeling.
modeling, and that will take, a good year to go through, get the success done, then do your community outreach and set up your TAC, and then by the time we do council goal setting next year, we'd have a really good input to be able to move it forward from a timing standpoint.
I think that's fair. That's council getting consensus on that to move forward on urban renewal. As far as getting all that in play, yeah, I think you've got a consensus here.
Okay, all right, fantastic.
Good,
Thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah,
and
thank you for
sharing
having me.
that with
Yeah,
us,
thank you.
and for talking so fast.
Yeah,
Lightning
I talked too
speed.
fast.
You didn't talk too fast. You just.
What's a
kept
lot
it-
of slides, I know, so,
I know,
sorry.
No, you kept us moving, so that
All
was
right,
great.
great job.
Thank
That
you, I'll
was
let you
great.
go.
All right, I'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right, next we
Further update.
have proposed development code amendments relating to cannabis.
Okay.
Okay, Peter, did you want to speak on this prior or at the end?
Yeah, I can kind of cue it up. So when cannabis was initially legalized in Oregon, I don't think anybody knew what the benefits and burdens associated with that would be. We knew there would be some. At that point, Colorado and Washington had not really set up their systems. So we had to make a lot of guesses on what might work and what might not work. And that the state did the same thing. The state was writing regulations. I helped. Some legislators reached out to me, and we made some guesses, and it turned out we were pretty wrong about stuff. I don't think any of us really understood cannabis, so that probably weren't the right people to be trying to figure this out. As every city kind of took a different approach based off the vision and values, the council they had at that time. Estacada very much viewed it as a possible economic opportunity. And so as far as the manufacturing side of it, took a more permissive view than some other cities at a time when a lot of other cities might not have allowed it in warehouse type facilities. Again, that council made the decisions based off not a lot of data and analytics because there just weren't any. So we were all kind of guessing. Since then, we've gotten clarity on a lot of the issues. I was asked a couple of years ago to kind of take a look at how we had how not Estacada, but how Oregon had done on it, and in my opinion, we hadn't done great because we didn't know things like that. You can't deduct your ordinary and necessary business expenses. I mean, there was just a lot of stuff we didn't know from a tax standpoint and other things. We, as our industrial campus, industrial base is growing, and in just the last 3 years, we've been getting a lot of complaints. And the city staff we've sent up there have used words like pungent during certain times of the year. We were aware of some businesses that decided not to locate here just because of the odor. So we've been asked to kind of take a look at what we can do, and our recommendation is a 3-pronged approach. This will be the first prong, and that is no longer, it would no longer be a outright allowed use in our zoning. We've changed the definition a bit so that it captures both industrial hemp as well as cannabis, because the odors emitted by them haven't really changed. I mean, they're about the same. We're also going to recommend some revisions to the business license that would allow a more expedited inspection, because these businesses do have filtration systems, but we're not able to easily verify whether those filtration systems are being maintained and utilized. I think that, this is kind of our first best attempt based on the feedback you've given us to bring you recommendations. Like anything we do, there's always room for improvement. And so to the extent that you think we can add some clarity or improve this, we're open to any suggestions.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Right.
So as far as the odor goes, it almost feels a little subjective. So correct me if I'm wrong. It almost feels like we're putting the cart before the horse here, since we want to look at researching an apparatus to detect the odor and determine at what level it becomes a nuisance. So it almost feels like we're banning it before we prove that it's a nuisance.
Okay, and Mike.
I would just encourage you to come down to the park any day of the week. It'll be obvious for you. There's no question that the odor is horrible down there. And then on the weekends, they just leave the doors open and it just wafts out. I mean, have you been down there to see if it smells?
I have.
And you didn't notice it?
No, I have,
Okay.
but I'm more thinking that it's subjective. And so I'm concerned that it will look like this is targeted. And so I personally would prefer that we do the apparatus that determines what level it would be, if that is possible.
All right, can I
Yeah.
respond? I see what you're saying there, because we haven't determined like all we know right now is that it is a nuisance. We do have people who are struggling to either keep employees or get employees to come there because it's, or businesses. We do have a business that left because of the odor. We have other businesses who are struggling to stay because of it. And so I would say at this point, it is a nuisance. It is a nuisance. We haven't tested it in court yet. Our judge said that it would need to be, if we did write a citation, we need to have witnesses that would come in. So folks that work out there, because it's public, and then the nuisance to say how it's harming them. Like, why is it a nuisance? Are they, is it impacting their employees in a negative way? Are they not able to get employees, or what's the nuisance part of it? And so that is the third part, because it is such a nuisance now. We've done a lot of education, so a big education process. It seems like the folks that are out there right now, they're responsive when we reach out to them, but they need to understand that this is like 24/7. They need to maintain this. And so if we could, as Peter was saying, it feels like the benefits are much lower than the burden is right now. And so if we eliminated it as a use, that means the folks that are there would stay as a pre-existing non-conforming use, and we continue to work with them. But we would need to amend the business license to say what we require as far as those filters go, and that we can inspect. And then how do we manage it going forward? Because there still would be cannabis in the industrial campus. And that's where it gets difficult, because there's multiple out there. Where is the odor coming from? At what level does it become where we just say, hey, it hits this level, you're getting a citation? And so that we can be very clear. And we're going to include in here paint booths, because we have had complaints about vehicle painting. Same kind of a thing where they're supposed to be doing it inside and those odors come. So we'd probably include both of those on the business license. Anybody who's trying to apply for a business license for a paint booth would also have those kind of. So I see what you're saying, and it's up to the council, to kind of weigh those. But we felt that it was in the right order, because we feel like we need to take care of the situation overall and then figure out how to have a better enforcement of what's there.
Jerry has something.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of completely cutting it out, because I don't want to hold, future businesses, I don't want to hold this against future businesses, because the people that are there now are, not following proper procedures 24/7, doesn't mean that somebody else coming in wouldn't. So I don't want to, take all possibility of that, of that not being an option out there. I definitely don't want to completely remove it. But, setting higher standards, getting the, whatever apparatus to measure, so that if we do cite them, it'll hold up in court. But I think that should be we should set the standard by, by doing that, because if we don't do anything, like getting that apparatus, then, how do we enforce it on the existing people that are, if we remove it, they're still going to be allowed in there and still going to be doing the same thing that they're doing. So I think we just need to, get that apparatus, and then, go heavy on enforcement of the air quality out there, the odor control. I think that's the direction that we need to go. But I don't want to hold current businesses against future businesses.
Okay, Jonathan, and then Mike.
Yeah, I guess, so two parts here. Peter, one, are other cities walking this back at all? Or do we know if there's other cities that are changing allowable uses for cannabis? Like, for some reason, I just don't feel like we're gonna be the first that has experienced that, okay, this was a little bit more than what people anticipated or whatnot, what was guessed or whatnot, projected, and it is what it is. I just can't believe we're the first person that's had this issue. So is
Yeah.
there other cities changing?
The trend that I'm seeing is that these businesses are locating the same sort of warehouse facility on ag land away from neighbors for this reason. And then as the price per pound has dropped, the ability of businesses to be able to get and afford warehouse space for this, I think, has been impacted. And that's also really impacted cities' tax money that they've gotten because it's a percentage. So yeah, I have seen other cities taking, regulatory approach. And then a lot of cities were really far more concerned in the beginning, just because, it's federally illegal, even though it's legal in the state. And so didn't want to permit it in the cities, which is part of the reason that Estacada got a lot of the growth that we got, because that city council had taken a far more permissive approach.
Mike, and then Jonathan, we'll go back to you.
I'd just like to see the language added for the first prong to current business owners would continue as a pre-existing non-conforming use until they have ceased to operate for a year and a day. Because it sounds like the way this is written, current businesses, they could just continue to sell it to another person and another person. It's going to go on in perpetuity. It's not going to resolve the issue. Was there a
It'd be
problem with putting?
So it'd be non-transferable to the next.
Well, it sounds, the
business.
way it reads is current businesses would continue as a pre-existing non-conforming use. Or just current
Mhm.
business owners. Just add the word owners in there so that at transfers of ownership,
I think that
it's a new business coming in. It's going to establish, are we going to stop giving business licenses for the businesses that aren't grandfathered in?
well, if a new business came in and bought an existing facility, that's definitely something we could look at. I think it becomes a bit trickier if someone's buying all the assets. So if they're buying the building, if they're buying the licenses, if they're buying the name, whatever intellectual property is there, that legally is going to have a lot more legal risk than new businesses coming in. So, and it might be that you guys are okay with the heightened legal risk, but I need to let you know that new business versus a asset purchase of all assets, I think we would have that would be a far more difficult case for us. So I think we can tighten it up. We've had that conversation. We wanted to get direction from you. But if we get to a certain level, it does come with, a lot more risk.
I think it's well written the way it is now as a first step, along with strict enforcement, getting the devices that are going to be able to read the smell, be a good starting point.
Jonathan.
Yeah, I'm just gonna come back to this from I want to comment on something you said, Councilman Henbush. I want to think about what kind of businesses, I guess, are we as a council, right? I don't mean this for me, but I mean, in no judgment towards anybody that makes their way doing cannabis, I have zero problem with that. Violent capitalism is beautiful, way to do it. Nothing to say about that, right? But when we're losing business because of an industry, right? Or we're not able to attract other large business, it would make me begin to wonder, as a goal, what kind of businesses are we trying to attract to our community, and do we want here? That is something we need to anticipate as well. And if we have documented cases now where we not only have businesses removing themselves from the area because of this and leaving the industrial area that we're trying to figure out how to fill, but now we have businesses that are flat out saying like, I would be here, but this, or I am also considering leaving. I think that there's a due diligence here to consider what it is that we want for that. I'm not saying, I think it's our responsibility with that to maybe look at the agricultural land that's a specific cannabis. I know that we have that for the distribution, or as far as like being retailers, right? We have a zone for that, but I mean, it's our responsibility to give them somewhere to go, but I do think it's something that we need to look at. I mean, it's affecting potentially millions and millions and millions of dollars, right? Like from coming here. So if our big players are saying it's a problem, then it's a problem. I don't think we root the people out. We can't anyway, right? But I don't think we need more. How many is there? 7?
I don't know what the total number is. It's between 4 and 7. Maybe 4 and 5. I'm not sure how many there are,
Okay.
but there's
I
several.
don't see a need for more.
I get you. Jerry?
So I'm not saying that I disagree with you. I just want to clarify what I was saying. I just don't want to rule out future businesses, any type of future business in the industrial area because of existing conditions. I want to be strict. I want to set standards on the existing businesses. I want to get that under control so that we don't lose businesses, so that we can attract more businesses into the area. But I don't want to rule out any particular business, because I mean, we're including body shops in this because of the painting, because of painting. Most body shops have a paint booth, and their ventilation is set up to where it blows the vapors, like what we're trying to do with our wastewater treatment plant. It blows it up into the atmosphere. So I don't want to rule out future businesses because of the conditions that exist today. Any future business because of the conditions that exist today. What I do want to do is I want to set high standards for what is there now. I want to be able to, legally, legally have those standards and, legally go in, feel comfortable legally citing these people for this stuff. That's what I'd like to see, but I definitely don't want to rule out any type of future businesses going into the industrial area because we don't know what the future holds.
Okay, John?
So is it my understanding that if you make the existing businesses non-conforming, that gives you additional leverage to actually enforce change with the odor stuff? Because it looks like they've been trying to do that for quite some time to no effect. And so by making it non-conforming, does that?
Well, so what it really does is impact future businesses coming in. So like we've gotten inquiries related to future cannabis businesses. And my response to them is, this is what our code currently says. This is an agenda item on future councils, just so that they're informed. Because what we wouldn't want would be people making business decisions based on incomplete information. I don't know how you as a counselor are going to resolve the issue. But I don't want people being caught off guard. So it's possible that technology could be invented or what have you that would eliminate the odors in the future. And if that's the case, you could certainly revisit this decision and just require that businesses utilize that technology. It would be difficult to require the current businesses to utilize that technology because they went through planning and permitting with their current systems. Though if we have that clear and objective odor standard and they're in violation of it, then maybe that would encourage them to change out their filters more, or to invest in new equipment, or whatever they need to do in order to mitigate the harm on their neighbors. And again, that's something that we've noticed is that the way that this has been described by the people that are complaining, the language that they've used, our own employees that have gone down there. So our code enforcement, one of our deputies went down there. The way that they've described the smell and basically their tolerance for that smell or willingness to smell that smell all the time, the language is getting stronger and stronger. And so it seems like we might be going in the wrong direction as far as the livability or workability of other businesses in there. And that's why during the retreat, we flagged this issue. Just because sometimes you don't know that the train's coming down the tracks. Sometimes you see the train coming down the tracks, and I'm wrong all the time. But the feeling that I got was that if we were looking at opportunity costs, lost business in the future, the sort of wages that our current employers down there are paying, particularly in the manufacturing industries versus the relatively low wages that are paid to people in the cannabis industry. If we're looking at those factors and taxes and everything else, then this is something that we wanted to flag so that you could have a thoughtful, informed conversation on it.
Okay. Jonathan. And then
I just was gonna circle back to like, what do you guys need from us moving? Like, how do we continue this? Or are you asking for a motion or what's that? And I don't want to cut Councilman
why don't-
Prokop.
Why don't we listen to Counselor Prokop and then I'll kind of say what we're kind of looking at.
So my question is because it takes a minute to pass code. Can we do the third prong right now? and
Yes.
Get that?
Yes, I don't know how effective that is going to be, but we will, I have not known how effective it would be, and I've heard bad feedback about it, and so I have hesitated to get that equipment and to try it out. But we can immediately start on getting that equipment to detect odor, determine how it works while we're going through the land use process, if you want to send it that way. Yes.
That just drove another question for me. Do we run a risk? Say we get this apparatus and it comes back and those levels are through the roof. Right? So now what?
Now we figure out how to enforce it.
Right?
Because there's
But
more like
now
a
we
s-
give the other tenants more firepower in that case then, right? Because now they're out of code and what would be compliance as well, right? So for complaints, then you could say that they're gonna, that's what my fear would this be. So now we're gonna acknowledge that it exists with no remediation plan for when it comes back and it's out of line.
So our goal would be, that, we transparently inform everyone of what we're trying to do. We would look at the best practices of other cities and at what level, the product, like decibels. I mean, this machine, we've looked at this machine. It kind of is like a noise detector. We would want to know what's a reasonable level. And you guys would ultimately make that decision. And then we would begin education and then, if necessary, enforcement. And again, I think that there probably is equipment, whether it's more regularly changing the filters or whether it's not opening doors, or whether it's freezing the product before the processing and the manufacturing, that could all mitigate odor, if done. And it's not every business that's creating the odor. But the ones that are creating the odor are creating a lot of odor. So that's how we would recommend that you approach it. Ultimately, how you decide to do it's entirely up to you.
So if we get direction to start the land use process, it is going to be time. People are going to be noticed about it. Has to go through the planning commission. They may or may not recommend. You know, I mean, they could recommend either way. And so it will take time and it would take public hearings. But I guess that would be my recommendation, is to go ahead and get that started while we're also looking at how do we enforce it, with who's there right now. And we can start right away working on the business license amendments. We do have other business licenses that are specialties, like food carts and short-term rentals. They have special business license processes already. So this, for cannabis and for paint would not be a problem.
Okay.
Is everyone else done with comment?
I got one more, not to keep this going, but paint particles are different than like cannabis particles. What if we get this machine and the odor is really strong, but this thing's not picking it up? Are there specific, it's got to be specific, because it could turn around and bite the industrial area on the backside, because if it shows that it doesn't have the odor because it doesn't have the same particles, heavy particles such as paint or something like that, but it still is immensely, overpowering, that could backfire. So I don't know how to counter that.
Our experience with complaints related to the paint has been that when the businesses were sealed up, there wasn't the odor. It's when they were either painting outdoors, which is not great for a variety of reasons, because as you said, those particles can move onto a neighbor's property or their vehicle or what have you. But that when they were, for lack of a better term, sealed up and their equipment was sending it out into the atmosphere, there wasn't a lot of odor at all. But when they were painting in the parking lot or opening the doors, and paint, 'cause maybe it's hot in there, I'm sure it's hot in there, that was creating the odor problems. So the reason we're including that is because that is something that has created complaints in the past. And again, it's a tool that would help us help those businesses help their neighbors by making sure that they understand they should not paint outside and they should keep their doors closed.
I do know of I can't remember what city it was, but they had like a compost place. Remember what used to be over by Home Depot and Kmart? And where the old Costco was. So there's a town that had one of those close by, and they if the city got complaints, they'd call the company would go out there, take its own readings and document it, and they would get it under control right away by whatever they had to do with mixing whatever's out there. So they learned to manage it. If there was a complaint, they were on it, and that reader seemed to work. So I'm hoping that it could be, we could come up with a similar situation here in Clackamas County. All they do, and like you said, it's ag land. It's typically separated from, it's not right next door to other businesses and stuff. But they'll say, hey, if we checked and they had their equipment installed, we're done. If it smells, it smells. As long as they, we can check off they put their equipment in. But they're more spread out. And here we're very compact in our industrial campus, and there's some amazing work going on out there. Pretty incredible businesses that you don't even know about that are in the park. And it's pretty phenomenal. We want to make the best environment possible. We want to have people able to work close to home. We want to get this resolved. And so I'm hoping that we can use this three-pronged approach, and who knows where number one will go. And maybe after it goes through the public hearing process, you'll decide not to change it. But I'd like to move it forward, see what we can do. We've been fighting this battle for several years now, and I don't seem to be making any headway on solving the problem.
And the OLCC's been great to work with. They've come in to, they can't do anything about hemp. And it just feels like the solution's gonna have to come from us. And we're doing our best to try and get it right. But we could be wrong, and if we are, we can course correct and try and figure out what other tools we might be able to utilize. You could have a completely different priority in the future, based on what we learn. But we think this gives us the best opportunity of regulating this, and also demonstrates to the people that are increasingly expressing concern that the city's carrying them and taking a proactive approach. And, again, hopefully we get it right and it works for everyone. But yeah, at least initially, we think that this is probably the best course of action.
Okay, John.
So what I'm hearing, what it sounds like is, an approved business. It's been a nuisance, sounds like from pretty early on, and it sounds like it's getting worse. I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming there are measures you can take, be it mechanical or whatever, to lower the odor, and nothing's happening. And so, why isn't anything happening? Is it too expensive? Rhetorical questions, too expensive or whatnot? But I'm not sure it's in our best interest, if we want to continue to allow more of these people to potentially initiate a new business and then add to the problem that currently is out of control versus go ahead and ban it currently, let the existing ones continue with their business, and then they either figure it out or they don't. And if down the road, if they figure it out, this is how we need it. As you said yourself, it was kind of haphazard, not haphazard, but not exactly sure what to do in the beginning. Well, now we know what we need. And so let's stop it, fix what we've got. And then if we want to revisit it down the road, that seems like a reasonable plan.
Okay. Jonathan, one more question, and then Mike, I'll give it to you.
Just trying to make the motion.
I was gonna motion. Oh, is that what this is all about? Then let's have a motion on this.
I move to direct staff to proceed with a three-pronged approach described below and or with the following or without any conditions.
Second.
Okay, you got a first and a second. Let's do a roll call on this, please. Sadie?
Counselor Blevins?
Aye.
I'm sorry, did he say?
Yeah.
Yes.
Say it again.
Aye.
Counselor Dolzall?
Yes.
Counselor McElroy?
Yes.
Counselor Metcalf?
Yes.
Counselor Prokop?
No.
Counselor Ten Bush?
No.
Mayor Drinkwine?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, last thing I have on council business is second consideration for ordinance 2025-002 and ordinance amending Title II of the Estacada Municipal Code. Yes, sir.
I move to approve ordinance 2025-002. But with the exception, I don't want to repeal chapter 2.33 Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee.
Okay, do I have a second on it?
Second.
All right, let's do roll call on this. And
Counselor Blevins?
No.
Counselor Dolzall?
No.
Counselor McElroy?
No.
Counselor Metcalf?
No.
Counselor Prokop?
Yes.
Counselor Ten Bush?
Yes.
Mayor Drinkwine?
no.
Motion fails.
Okay,
I move to approve ordinance 2025-002.
do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Let's do roll call on this.
Counselor Blevins?
Yes.
Counselor Dolzall?
Yes.
Counselor McElroy?
Yes.
Counselor Metcalf?
Yes.
Counselor Prokop?
No.
Counselor Ten Bush?
No.
Mayor Drinkwine?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Moving on to citizen and community group comments. I have Shirley Burke.
Thing on. Okay, the first thing I'm gonna talk about, you guys keep talking about Broadway and 10th Street and stop signs. There's only one sign that's needed coming out of the south. Because if you put another stop sign there, you're gonna bottleneck that thing when school's out. Nobody's gonna get out of that intersection. So the ones going north and out onto 10th and should be only one more stop sign, not two. And also, when you guys are talking about the smells and stuff down at the industrial area, you don't have to buy a machine. You can call DEQ. DEQ will come in and they will check every one of these buildings you want, and they will tell you where it's at. And a lot of that smell is coming from the nursery down below you guys. They grow pot. These people, the one business that you guys were trying to shut down, he brings his pot or his stuff in frozen. It's frozen. It's not a thing. And, you're talking about paint shops. Melody knows my story about paint shops. We have a paint shop behind by our cul-de-sac that we've been fighting for years because they will open the doors and stuff. And we have little kids and we have seniors like me. And so the last time we called the EQ on them, not Melody, but us, they came in and they actually shut the business next door down too, the cabinet makers, for 3 days because they were doing work outside. We have these little kids play outside. And so I haven't noticed the paint shop lately. I don't even know if it's open anymore. But DEQ can check these smells without costing the city money. So,
Can I make one comment on
Yeah.
that? Thank you so much for coming and sharing, Shirley. And I just also want to say there's not any one particular business that we're trying to shut down.
well, I know.
And the one I think that you're referencing that has the frozen, that's not one that has necessarily been a problem. We have ongoing, there's been businesses come and businesses go.
Okay.
And it's just an ongoing problem that I haven't been able to solve.
Yeah,
And
well,
so,
that's the one business I was concerned about because
Mhm.
he's put a lot of money into his filtrations and
Mhm.
he does medical, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. All right, do I have any online? Any more? Nope, okay. We are now at mayor and council reports and comments. I will start off with you, Jerry. Oh, ooh, I'm gonna toss it around.
It's a rarity now sitting over here that I get to start, but I'm okay with that. I'm going to start off with thank you to the DEIC members, the committee members that that have shown that they are committed to helping the city of Estacada, committed to the work that they were doing on their committee. I appreciate everything that they've done. And I ask that you continue your commitment and apply for these other committees. Now that we've opened these committees up to 9 members, I ask that you apply for these other committees just because I know the commitment that you have towards the city of Estacada and the good that you can do. So I ask that you apply for these other committees. We've got some spots that we can fill. Don't necessarily have to fill, but we can fill. The other thing is I'm reaching out to the whole community. There are a lot of events going on in the city this year. Reaching out, we need volunteers. Volunteerism is something that's hard to come by, lately, and we definitely need volunteers to continue to put on these big events that we have in the city, from everything to the chalk walk, Art at the Creek, 4th of July parade, Oktoberfest, the run that Parks and Rec puts on every spring. We need volunteers, and you can go to the city's website. You can reach out to the committee chairs. You can reach out to the committees directly, and I'm sure city staff can direct you on how to volunteer. But we desperately need volunteers for all of our city events, so that the committee members can put the work in and to make the event the best that it can be, rather than having to man a corner, with a barricade because they don't have enough volunteers. Okay, now on to the probably not as happy part of my night. Last week I talked about perception and reality, and how one person's perception is their reality. And there's a couple of groups in the city of Estacada that perceive that we are not doing what's best for them, that we don't care. And dissolving the DEI is one of those things that that makes these people perceive that we don't care about them. We're not putting in the work for them. When I know, in our heart of hearts, that's not what this council is trying to do, but that's their perception. We took away this program with no plans of replacing it with anything else. So their perception is that we don't care about them, and that's their reality. And that's sad. So I would like to propose that we, continue talks about having a community engagement and accessibility committee, however that would look. But I would like to continue talks about having this committee, because it is one of our city goals, and it might change some of those people's perceptions of this council. If we can put this, if we can have talks, figure out a way to put this committee together, however that, what we decide what their role is, we decide how, how we want them to engage the community, and then put it out there, because there's definitely a need for community engagement volunteerism being one thing, just one of many things that committee could tackle. So I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I want to thank all of you that spoke out in favor and against DEI. Your opinions matter. And I definitely want to thank city staff for putting together these packets and giving us the time to tackle these issues that we have without just bombarding us with a bunch of miscellaneous stuff that we can handle it at different times. So thank you all. Thank you, council. I appreciate all the work that you put in. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Jerry.
Just want to thank everyone that came out tonight, spoke and shared their opinions on things. Thank the city staff for preparing us for the meeting. Want to give a special thanks to John LaGarza. He's doing a lot of work with the Economic Development Committee, putting in a lot of time, and he's always just great at driving the conversation forward. Appreciate him. Thank you.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts. So I wrote it down. Bear with me. I want to take a moment to talk about what we've lost and what we risk by removing the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee. Our town has built a reputation. Some of it's deserved, some self-created, and some based on misunderstandings of small towns. But whatever the cause, we're not helping ourselves by removing chances for residents to engage with the city. Since the first vote to disband the DEI committee, some volunteers have stepped down from their roles in other committees because of our decision. Media coverage has painted us in a negative light, and we've heard from residents who feel this decision doesn't reflect the values they thought our community held. Visitors have told us they're now not choosing to spend time or money here. If we want to grow tourism and support our local businesses, we must create a welcoming environment. This shift in public opinion is an opportunity for us as a city council to show that we're open to change and ready to meet the needs of our residents. I believe creating an outreach and accessibility committee will help us do this. Since the DEI committee was removed, we've lacked a system for broader community engagement and connecting residents with local, county, and city resources. This has left a potential gap, making it harder for some people to navigate support systems due to communication issues, lack of information, or unclear processes. This outreach and accessibility committee will fill that gap, ensuring everyone has access to city resources, information, and ways to get involved. It would focus on removing barriers to communication, technology, civic participation, and physical access. This committee would also reinforce the idea that our town is welcoming for all. It would help improve how we share information and gather input so that every voice can be heard. To be clear, this isn't about replacing one approach with another. It's about taking practical steps to ensure everyone has the tools and support needed to engage with local government. Creating this committee is an important step to keeping Estacada connected and responsive to residents' needs. While we can stand by our decisions, we must also recognize any unintended consequences and learn from them to make better choices going forward. I've sensed growing frustration, not just about this decision, but about the feeling that some voices weren't heard. We say we're listening, but are we really taking their concerns seriously? As a nonpartisan council, we must represent all residents. Nearly 40% of our community is not registered with any political party, and the rest are not overwhelmingly aligned with one side or the other. We need to set politics aside and make decisions based on what residents say they need, not just what we think is best for them. When trust in local government weakens, it's not just engagement that suffers, community unity is at risk too. We must rebuild that trust, and part of that is being careful in how we respond to the public. When residents express frustration or disagreement, responding negatively or dismissing only deepens the divide. We're in a position of public trust, and we must lead with respect, even when we don't agree. Our job isn't just to make tough decisions. It's to understand their impact and keep building trust with the people we serve, and not just with constituents that we align with politically. I know everyone on this council cares deeply about our community and is working hard to make the best decisions. That's why I believe adding an outreach and accessibility committee, and you can call it whatever you want, is a necessary step to address the gaps we now face. By taking these steps together, we can strengthen our community and bring people back to the table. I look forward to working with all of you and with all of our residents to make that happen.
Okay, thank you, Eddie. Jonathan.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody that came out tonight. I appreciate everybody that comes and shares. I love hearing from you, even if I don't agree with what you're saying. I've been consistent about saying this. I still appreciate your opinions. I still appreciate hearing what you're going through. It does land on me. I understand that people are going through their different variants of hard, and it's not that I don't care. It's just that sometimes we don't agree, but sometimes that's just the way it's going to be, unfortunately. That being said, I appreciate your attendance tonight. I appreciate the good conversation. And, like Councilman McElroy said, some of the stuff that has been put out is it's public information. And just because somebody doesn't lead with a mistake like it's a badge of honor, doesn't mean that that person is hiding it or hiding from it. And I think that that's something to consider before you defame people on half truths. So I would also consider that when you come and you ask us to consider the small town politics and how it doesn't match the federal narrative, how your behavior in response to something you don't like does, which would then mean that what we were worried about could potentially exist here. So when you behave in a certain way towards people because you don't like something, right? Like there becomes a point where maybe you have to address the fact that it could exist here, right? Especially with hate speech, and that goes both sides of the partisan line. So I would be really cautious as to talk about inclusivity until it doesn't benefit you anymore, and then discard it in the way that you treat people and tact. Everybody up here has addressed that they would like to find a way to represent this community and its needs and community engagement. There's not been one person up here that has said we do not want this to be the case here, that we do not want to engage our community. In fact, we've opened the lines of communication to this community and welcomed you here, whether we like what you're saying or not, because that is what it's about, quite frankly. So I would just suggest that before you go saying that we don't care or that we're not considering, that even though that your vote is not represented in this, there is still a large portion of the population in this town that's vote is represented sitting at this counter and up here at this podium, whether we like it or not. So there is their feelings to consider in this as well, not just our constituents, not just those sitting in this room, but there's a lot more other people who did vote and they used their voice to do that. And this is the decision that they made, not me personally, but the community as a whole.
Hey, oh. Jonathan.
I appreciate everyone's preparation and participation. There is a lot of things coming up this year, and I look forward to doing the best we can to move this community forward in the best way possible.
Okay, thank you. Love it.
I want to thank everyone for coming out as well. This is probably the safest place in Estacada to come speak. And I think that if there are anyone who is underrepresented, they should come and speak or get online and speak on Zoom. Please come speak your mind. Come speak and say what you have to say. I want to commend Michael for coming forth. Like Jonathan said, he doesn't wear like a badge of honor, but it doesn't mean he hides it. And I think that making April the Child Abuse Prevention Month is actually a great thing as well. So that's all I got to say.
Yeah, thank you for that. And on a positive note, I just want to bring up, I don't know if all of you have been paying attention, but we've got the Water Quality Award from the EPA and DEQ that was wonderful to have because of the direction we're going in. So on a positive note, we are good stewards of the water system. And that is something to be proud of as a community. We're at the top of the clackamas. Everything that runs down from us runs to 15 other cities. So I should hope we all are happy with that. The other note is tomorrow I'll be speaking at the Mass Timber Conference right here in Estacada. They're bringing them all up to here, Solder Timber. Reinhardt will also be there, the owner of Solder Timber, speaking on the green side of timber. So we used to be a timber town, and a lot of people lost their job when timber went away. But at the same time, this is a way for people who already know timber to be on the other end of it, the green side of it, bringing it back online, doing something they already know, but in a good way. So I just want to say I'm very proud of this designation as being the place they've all decided to come, and hope that CLT and glue lamb will become a normal part of our day here in Estacada on the green side of timber. So I hope you all are happy with that. It's two positive things I have. So thank you again for coming tonight, and thanks city staff for doing everything that they do to make this all possible, and for the water award. We appreciate that. So thank you. Okay, any other comments like to be made? Peter, any closing, or Melanie, any closing? All right, I will adjourn this meeting.